What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Bogan podcast, where we talk about anything and everything from faith-based perspective. Guys, I am super stoked. I'm super excited about this specific episode. We have Craig Avera on. He is the co-owner and a co-founder of Cali Coffee. If you like coffee, then I'm sure you will like this episode. He goes over the process and just what it took and what the why, right? The reasoning behind Cali Coffee. He talks about how it started, when it started, what was the thought process behind it, and his vision moving forward as well, you know, in the years to come with his business, with his company. It was an amazing interview. We also go into the personal side of his life, how, you know, that feeling of fatherhood, how he'll soon to be married to his soon to be lovely wife, or his wife, Rose. But this is a very, very, very exciting episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you are on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Please give this video a thumbs up and comment down below what is your favorite type of coffee if you have one. Or comment down below, do you drink coffee? Do you not drink coffee? Let me know in the comments below. If you are on Spotify, be sure to follow us and give us a rating. It would help out tremendously with the algorithm. And if you are on Apple Podcasts as well, be sure to give us a rating and be sure to follow us as well. It helps out tremendously, and I'm very much appreciative. I've said this before, I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 and more. I'm very much appreciative for those of you who tune in and listen to the episodes. Even if it's a one-time thing, even if it's a weekly thing, whatever the case may be, I am very much appreciative. With that said, one more thing too, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. If you're watching this and you don't follow us on Instagram or TikTok, what are you doing, man or girl, or woman, excuse me. Be sure to follow us on TikTok or Instagram at Bogan Everywhere Podcast, or at Bogan Everywhere Podcast. I don't know why I said or, but you get the point. Sorry, I'm very ecstatic if you couldn't tell. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Craig, thank you so much for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I was fascinated by a bunch of different things, and I was reading and I was doing my research and stuff, but I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests is, what is something you would say to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh. Well, you know, I've taken a lot of chances since I was 18.
Yeah.
Normally that would be the answer, is go and take a risk, right? Mm-hmm. But I've always kind of, I've never been afraid to take a risk or move across the country on a whim. And so I guess looking back now, it's like, take things a little bit slower, you know, Don't rush into anything. That'd probably be better advice. You know, sometimes you get so excited when you're young, you have a great idea, or at least you think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And you kind of take the first opportunity that comes your way, which is not always the best one, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, for anybody young, it's like, be a little bit more methodical, think through. If you had a mentor, great, who can act as a sounding board. I did not, so you know.
So something that strikes me about you, because I listened to a podcast with you and your wife, you know, and I've done my research. Like I said, you're always so ecstatic, you're always so energetic and excited, right? So what was your upbringing like? Were you always like that, or was it something that happened in your life? Like what was that like for you?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Oregon. I was adopted when I was a little baby, like 3 months old, which is funny because I have a 3-month-old daughter now named Rain. But I grew up in a very small town in Oregon, and my parents were the best, always really supportive, and I just had a lot of energy, man. I would play every sport. I'd want to do every activity there was, and I was always the kid scraping up his knees and getting hurt first, but you know, you get back up. And so in high school, I was voted like Hollywood bound just because I had this sort of personality that people were like, you know, I don't know what he's got. It's kind of weird. I don't even know if I dig it, but he's got something. And so, man, I've always sort of just loved life and wanted to make the most out of it.
Yeah. So you were an actor too, right?
Very generous to say that. I dabbled. I dabbled the surface. I had like a pinky toe in the acting world. And then I realized, you know, it's hard, man. Like, you don't realize how hard walking and talking is because you do it all the time. But when you have to play a character and all that, and then the industry out there is just brutal. You know, it's crazy. Yeah. And so it's one of those things, you know, if you're willing to dive head into that world, and I have a lot of friends that were and are still in that world, it's great. But, you know, it's crazy because you go into that knowing that you're a statistic of like 1.0001% that's likely to make it. And yet you do it anyway. And so there is something special to that. But I realized after a while that it just wasn't probably the path for me. And I got into fitness actually instead and started training actors. That became kind of more of my niche, my specialty.
Yeah, so you said that you started in the coffee industry when you were 16.
Yeah.
What did you specifically do in terms of like your actual role, your job? Were you in type of management? Were you just making coffee? What was that looking like for you?
Yeah, I started when I was 16. It was actually my first job in the small town that I grew up in. There was a coffee shop that was built, and it was high energy. It was a lot like Cali, and I wanted to work there, and I basically just butted my way into a job and was like, hey, I'm gonna work here and just make the most of it. But I was there for about 4 years, and I did some kind of like management type of stuff, but really it was kind of just doing what my crew does now, and now we have over 200 employees kind of doing the same thing. And what's wild is you see a lot of these people. Because when I got into that business, I was like, man, this is a crazy thing. I love this. It wasn't really about the coffee. It wasn't the product.
Yeah.
Like I'd mentioned, I really wasn't ever like a coffee fanatic, a coffee guru. I was never like, interested in that side of it. It was more about just the vessel being coffee or drinks or whatever. It could be anything, right? Fitness was the same way, but it's creating those connections and meeting people and enriching their lives in one way or another. Yeah, and so that's kind of how this business came about.
Wow. So, I want to talk about the business side in a second, but with your fitness, man, what does that look like on a daily basis? Do you do CrossFit or do you go to the gym? Like, what do you do?
I did.
Okay.
So yeah, CrossFit was a very big part of my life. I was really lucky. I found an amazing gym out in LA. When I moved there, to act for that stint, I was like 21 years old. And so, I moved up there by myself. I had like, not a few bucks in my bank account, not much. I was, literally dragging futons off the street. If people would leave them, I was like, okay, that looks good. I'll take that. That'll match. You do what you got to do to survive. And I forget the original question there.
So, no, you're good.
Sorry.
It was in terms of your workout. Do you work out daily or?
Yes. So yeah, I've always been into fitness, I guess, since, you segue from like high school sports, and then it's kind of like what's next. And then a lot of people naturally just get involved in working out, some kind of fitness, just to kind of keep that rush, that endorphin high, that kind of thing. So I got into very traditional, Globo gym, I like to call it stuff, like LA Fitness or a 24 hour, something like that at first, right?
Yeah.
And that was good enough. You got your headphones in, nobody really talks to each other. You got the creepy guy over here checking out the girl on the leg machine. And then it evolved. I was like, man, this is like, it's something. But then it turned more into like what's next. And then I found a CrossFit gym, which it was starting to become like a thing, like CrossFit. You'd see it like a little bit mainstream, but it was really kind of this underground fitness thing. And when you visualize it, you'd see these like really jacked, ultra ripped dudes with beards, like doing box jumps and snatches in their garage. And that's kind of how it started, honestly. And so I was like, oh, I don't have a beard, but I dig that. That sounds great. That looks fun, I could throw some weight around. And so I just started at a gym in West Hollywood where I was living. It was, a couple miles from my apartment. Started that, and then I really liked it. I enjoyed it a lot to the point where I was like, man, how do I do this and train other people? And so I became a coach and did that for, like 7 years, man.
Wow, as a personal trainer. So let's talk about the business. Sorry about that. Well, let's talk about the business. So how did Cali Coffee come up to begin with? Clearly, I'm pretty sure it started with you as an idea, but like, what was the thought process behind it? Why coffee? Why not something in the fitness industry or something? Like how did Cali Coffee come up? Yeah, definitely.
I had an epiphany, one day I was in LA, I think I was like turning 28 or something, and I was young, but I was like, I'm getting older, man, like 30, I'm closer to 30 now than I am even to 25. So I'm like, the idea of coffee and starting my own business had always been just kind of in the back of my head. And I think it just kind of started to come back around to the forefront when I was thinking ahead, like, what am I going to be doing in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, like I only got one body. It's only, going to last so long. And, is this sustainable? Or am I always going to be trading basically time for money in order to make ends meet? And while I really enjoyed, training people, it's that's a competitive world in and of itself, fitness out there in LA, because everyone's looking for the best trainer and this and that. So I kind of was like, you know what, it's funny. So I was like, I'm gonna do this. I kind of just decided overnight, like, I'm gonna finish up here in LA. I feel like it's run its course. And I'm gonna go back to Oregon, where I'm from, and sort of like just regroup, regather, and figure out where to open up Cali Coffee. I already have the name, I was working on the logo, the drink names, all that was kind of just rolling through. And I'd been dating Rose, who's my fiance now and business partner, not that long at the time, maybe 4 or 5 months. And so I kind of told her, like, hey, I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving LA, bye. And she goes, well, what about me? And I was like, I don't know. Like, what about, she goes, well, can I go with you? And I go, if you want to go with me, sure. So she jumped in my suitcase.
Wow.
Basically.
Okay.
Leap of faith on her end, especially. And her parents are like, you're moving to where with who,
Yeah.
And she's like, yep, I'm going to Oregon with this guy. And so we moved out to Oregon and stayed at the house that I grew up in, for a couple months. And we'd literally look on a map and just be like, hey, where should we do this? Because again, we had the idea. The reason we didn't do fitness, I just, coffee was always the idea. It was always what I just...
Like that dream.
I knew it, exactly. Yeah. It was the dream, right? So, opening a gym, I think that would have been cool, but it just wasn't as exciting.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do it, do what you wanna do, right? We were already all in anyway. And so, we were looking all over, man, and we were kind of, should we go to Colorado? Should we go to North Dakota? So we were looking at a lot of different places and trying to weigh the pros and cons.
Wow.
And then we ended up in Florida. She's from Pennsylvania, so her parents would go from Pennsylvania to Florida in the winter, and so she would go as a kid down to Jupiter, which is up in Broward County, right? Yeah. And so she knew about it. She's like, hey, why don't we check out this place that I used to go when I was a kid? So we booked a plane ticket for the next day pretty much. Flew over there, landed, and we started driving around and realized that really the industry that I was talking about that was born in the Northwest really didn't exist where we went.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like the right fit. There were so many parallels,
Yeah.
Cali Coffee always represented California.
Yeah.
And we were like, this kind of feels sort of like the East Coast version of California.
Yeah.
You got the beach, it's on the other side of the coast, but it's there, palm trees, all that. So it just worked. But we didn't have a location picked out. We moved. We were like,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Up and left. Yeah.
That's very brave. So speaking of bravery, how long were you and Rose dating until she made that decision with you to move and stuff?
Yeah, it had to be. I mean, it's a little blurry, but I would say 3 to 5 months maybe tops.
Wow.
Yeah, it was short. So I was surprised that she wanted to move.
Yeah.
And but she did.
Wow, man, that's awesome. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And so, why? Explain this to me. Why Cali Coffee? Where'd that name come from? What specifically was the meaning?
So the name actually came about like literally over. I was in college, I think. Maybe even high school, man. But definitely in college. I remember a conversation I had, and I joke about this all the time because I'd already had the name Cali Coffee picked out, and I was kind of keeping it like a secret in my head type of thing. But you start talking with your boys. I lived in a fraternity at Oregon State for a while, and you start just I got this cool idea, and Cali Coffee. It just always had a nice ring. It was like an alliteration, CC. It was like 2 syllables. Okay. I just thought it was great. And so we ended up when we moved over here, we checked and it wasn't trademarked, and we snagged that, picked it up, and I don't know how. It's just a great name. I'm biased, but to me, it's a great name.
Yeah. No. Hey, everyone's got to have their own unique name. Not some basic thing. Yeah. But so that is a unique name because it's like, who comes up with Denver or Coffee? You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like Cali has a specific niche, and there's a unique reason behind that. So I like to ask this to a lot of business owners, perspective from all sides. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is by any chance?
I do. I feel like he pops up on my feed a lot, but I'm not like a true believer. I don't know.
I got you.
Not so much.
So do you use debt for the business in any means?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you use debt at all for business? Do you think it's okay to get into debt for business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the biggest challenge really, I was gonna say one of the biggest, but really the biggest challenge for us getting the first location going was really like, how are we gonna pay for this, I think a lot of ideas you never know about them because people have a great idea and there's no way to bring it to life. And so, I think you have to go into debt or you have to sacrifice something unless you've got, if you're loaded going into it, it's a different story, I guess. Yeah. But very rarely is that the case, especially for young entrepreneurs. It's usually their first idea. And so they're coming either out of high school, out of college, or whatever, And so it always takes more capital than you think it's going to also.
Yeah.
So whatever you think, you got to double, triple, even 4x it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially because ours we had to build from the ground up. It's not like we were just going into a shopping plaza and doing it that way. So yeah, I think taking on debt is one of those necessary evils just to get it going. And then I know a lot of people like to leverage debt once they get that credibility to then further. And yes, I think that's good. It's a catch-22 because you're not able to leverage debt when you have no equity or you know, proof of concept at all. Yeah.
So let's just say you guys are cash flowing great and you own everything, right? Would you still leverage debt?
Yes. So if you have like a lot of buying power that you're able to, that will extrapolate your growth, then absolutely. Because again, you're really taking a risk on yourself. I mean, if they're willing to take a risk on you and the money's there, if the money's there, take it, you know, a lot of times. And I know right now, you know, money's expensive. It's such a cliche term, but it's true. Interest rates are high. Everything's kind of wacky right now, but you know, you need capital to grow, and you need that gasoline to throw on the fire in order to do it. So yeah, I think it's perfectly acceptable. And the more that your business becomes, or your brand, company, whatever, gets established, the more confidence they're going to have in you. You get better rates, you get better terms, you get better offers, and you know, you're more confident in your ability to make the next one succeed. I can give you a million examples, but yeah, and you know, when we initially did it, your mentality shifts so much. Like in the beginning, it was like, how do we avoid debt as much as possible? You know, let's try and stay as in the black as possible and just owe everybody nothing, which is a great mentality too. But I think a lot of it's just goal oriented. You know, like right now at this point in time, we have no debt, and it's great. Yeah, so you know, I grew up so much of my life like having a mountain of credit card debt. I never did student loans because I dropped out after like a semester. I was like, this is not for me. But I had other forms of debt, and it's stressful, man. You know, you get like 888 numbers calling you all the time trying to collect, and it's just like, that's the biggest thing. I always quote the Kanye West song, his lyric where he goes, having money's not everything, not having it is. It's so true. Like if you have money, you don't know how stressful it is to not. And like, I didn't grow up like, I was like very mid, right? Like parents were awesome, they did what they could for me, but it wasn't like we weren't like going to Olive Garden was like a crazy night out. We do it like once every month type of thing. And so I think not coming from money, you appreciate when you have it a lot more too, you know? But you also have these survival instincts where like, you're like, man, if I didn't have money, I know how to, I can roll with it. I can survive, I've been there before. So it's interesting. But yeah, now that we're kind of established, we really have increased our ability to borrow money and to grow that way. So options just open up.
So wait, but you said you don't have debt right now in the business? There's no debt?
Correct. And you know, Rose and I, we started it, and we own 100% equity in Cali Coffee, all the stores, you know. And there came a point where we're like, what is the best way to grow, you know? Because we had a lot of offers. Once you start growing, you know, you kind of get on the map. We're still small, but like
angel investors?
Yeah, people come up. You know, in the beginning, it's so funny because you approach the same type of people if you can even get a hold of them, and they're basically like, well, you know, you have nothing, so wait till you have a business and then come back. Like on Shark Tank, they're like, you know, you're not really a business yet, which is fair. You know, they need to weigh their risk as well. But so always the first chapter is always the toughest. But once you're established, then you know, people approach you, but they want to get in early a lot of times, right? So they want to take on, you know, it's just 20% of the business and we'll give you this much, but your business is only valued at, you know, it's like a small piece of the pie. And they know, they're looking down the road, like what's this company's potential in 5, 10, 20 years? And if they think it's going to be like that, they take 20% now when it's cheap. That's great for them, you know? And it's good for the entrepreneur too, because it allows them maybe a pathway that they couldn't have otherwise. But we just kept saying, you know, not the right deal for us, no thanks, you know, thanks but no thanks. And you know, I'm very thankful that we did do that, because now we just kind of like pushed through it, you know, just grunted our way through stores number 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 6, and retained all of our equity ownership. So now, you know, the business has grown a lot, and we still have this like 30,000 foot view of like, okay, now our options are unlimited. We don't have any investors to like talk to yet. So it's nice.
Beautiful, man. That's a nice problem to have for sure. No, you own 100%. You have no debt. That's remarkable, because fortunately, not many people can say the same thing. Because the math behind it, it's like, well, if you're in no debt and you're cash flowing all the time on your own money, then the profits are much bigger versus if you had debt, because you have to pay back costs, you know, labor, all that stuff. That is beautiful, man. That's awesome. You're actually, I think I think one of the very first few business owners that I've spoken to that has no debt on the business.
Really? Yeah.
I swear, because it's a common thing, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm on the fence. I'm more of a cash is king type of guy. I'm a faithful follower of Dave Ramsey. I don't agree with all of his philosophies, but I love to ask people about their perspectives in terms of debt versus no debt, you know, in a business perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, speaking of business, I want to ask you, do you think that Florida is a better state to run and to do business than California?
Well, you know, going through COVID, right, with that whole chapter, it was so, you know, California was basically shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, we got lucky with that whole chapter because of the intrinsic nature of Cali Coffee's business model.
Yeah.
It being people don't come inside.
Exactly.
You're at the window, you know, like we really didn't, we got so lucky, you know, through COVID. We were super blessed for that. And we actually got really busy through COVID because so much was shut down, but Cali was relatively unaffected. And so it kind of became people's outing. You know, we'd come up to customers in line, you know, and we'd be like, hey, what are you guys doing today during COVID? Like right during, you know, March through May 2020. And they were like, this is it, man. You know, this is our outing and we'll probably be back later. Yeah. And we're like, oh, where'd you drive from? They'd be like, oh, Coral Springs, Weston, like all over. Because this one we only had the one store open in Hollywood. Yeah. So if you wanted Cali, you had to drive to Hollywood, Florida and get it. And so that really did put us on the map. And again, you almost feel guilty at the time because you're like, man, like, you know, our business is increasing throughout this incredibly tough time for everybody. But then you look at it like, okay, but now we get to employ more people. We get to give someone like something bright in their day that they wouldn't have otherwise. And so we felt a lot more responsible to not only like, to just do right by everything, by our employees, our customers. And so that was an interesting chapter. But overall, yeah, Florida has been awesome. You know, there's some tax benefits being here versus other states, which is nice. And then I think the weather, we you know, despite having a drive-through, we just, when it rains or if it's just nasty out, you know, business does go down a little bit. Yeah. Which again, with the drive-through, you'd think you're kind of like bad weather-proof, but you're really not. I think people just get in this mentality of like, okay, I'm gonna cozy up, sit on the couch, chill. Yeah. Funny coming from Oregon where it rains like, you know, 200 days a year over there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but here it's nice, and when it's beautiful out like this, you know, people come because it's like we're out and about, we're doing something, and grab a drink. Dude,
so let me ask you something as well. So right now, as you know, I'm in the podcast space, and it's getting competitive. You got every week, you know, the person you grew up with, your neighbor, whoever. Oh, I'm starting a podcast. I got a podcast, whatever. So it's a competitive space, right? The restaurant industry, same thing. It's competitive, right? Coffee, I'm sure, and I want you to attest to this in a second, can be a competitive space, right? Yeah. I want you to sell me on the idea, because why not go to Starbucks? Why not go to Dunkin' Donuts? Why not go to the local mom and pop shop, right? Like, what is it about Cali? I think I know, because I've seen the answer, but what is it about Cali that stands out compared to your local Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, right? Sell me on that. Like, what's the deal with that?
It's a totally different experience, and I think that's what it comes down to. It all boils down to like how the customer feels when they arrive, when they leave, and when they're not at the store getting a drink. Like, you know, they have that desire to go back, and that's our whole thing, is like creating authentic connections between our crew and our customers. And you know, it's a whole vibe. You know, we think about the moment they see the first sign, like what's the color scheme they see, is that going to put them in a good mood? So we have, you know, the sun and the waves and the logo and the blue and the yellow. And then when they pull in, we try and make it like a whole experience. You know, you got the music outside. We always make sure in our leases that we can get outdoor speakers allowed, because we like to blast it, man. We like to throw it on 10 and let it rip. And so if you're the 8th car in line, you start to hear, you know, your favorite song come on, you're like, okay, I get it. And you know, you roll down the window, you get greeted by somebody coming to you instead of talking through a big box with a faceless, you know, speaker right there. So no speaker box. And then our drink selection it's just more fun, you know. It's, you know, we love, we're very unpretentious here. It's like the anti-coffee shop coffee shop. Like, get whatever you want. We're not like the twirly mustache guys in there, like making you feel like an idiot if you don't order your cortadito correctly. I probably said it wrong and they're gonna scoff, you know. We're like, nah, you want more caramel? Throw that in there. Like, let's go, whipped cream on your straw all day. And so
I saw you dancing there like 10 minutes ago, man. I saw you hyped up.
You should have seen this weekend. We opened a new store, and it's just it's a big party. And so we like to create, it's really culture driven, this whole business, and it starts with the crew. It's always like, we always say the core of the business is the crew. And then from there, they kind of spread that same energy, that same vibe to the customer. And again, I feel like sometimes it's like this intangible feeling for the customer where they're like, man, those are my people. Those are my coffee people. I want to go back. I want to see, my boy Kyle at the window or my girl Tiffany or whoever it is. They start to gravitate literally towards certain, we don't even call ourselves baristas because we're just like day makers. We just, we make drinks, we dance, we listen to music, and we serve drinks, and that's it. And so, again, like you just don't get that at Dunkin'. We have a good friend of ours. He says he's been going to the same Dunkin' Donuts in New York for like 10 years or something. Walks up, orders like a medium hot latte with 1 sugar, whatever his drink is.
Yeah.
Sees the same people. He knows all them. Yeah. They look at him every time he walks through the door like he's a total stranger.
Wow.
It's like, how do you not know? Our staff here, if you come twice, they're probably going to be like, they're, hey, Guillermo, what's up, man? Like they'll know, like, are you getting that medium ice? What was it, a Beverly? They'll try and remember. And then we'll go beyond that, like to where, we're trying to learn dogs' names, kids' names.
Dogs' names.
Yeah, we love dogs here, the pup cups. And again, you just really don't get that at the Giants.
Yeah.
So we're not scared of it. If there's a Starbucks on a corner and there's an empty lot next to them, we'll pop a Cali right there. It's great.
Wow, that's awesome. That's remarkable. So you focus a lot on building those intentional relationships, you'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it'd be unwise and it'd be ignorant and just I guess naive not to look at the data points that Starbucks and Dunkin' have. Yeah. Because they're paying a lot of people a lot of money to figure out what are the best sites, what side of the road should we be on, all that kind of thing. So you look at where a Starbucks is, and again, it's sort of like a vote of confidence. Like if there's a Starbucks here and a empty lot there, that's probably going to be a good site for us too. But we really try and focus more on what we're doing and just doing it extremely well.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's great. And so do you focus on creating those stable foundations first, making sure you got the right management, making sure you hit a certain mark in sales, and then you guys focus on the next location? Or are you just like, all right, building stuff next? What does that look like for you and Rose?
It's evolved a lot. In the beginning, it was more of, open one store, focus heavily on that. Once it gets to a certain level of comfortability in terms of operational, sales, everything, then we start looking for the next. But the problem with that model is, again, it's all goal driven. So if you want to open 5, maybe even 10 stores, you can do it that way. And then, in 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to have your 5 to 10 stores. And that's a great living. You can be very happy with that and focus on the 10. But at some point we realized, hey, Cali, it's so special. The impact it's making on every community is awesome. We're, our crew's growing. It just gets really fun. And you're like, we want to blow this thing up. And so you start looking, all right, well, if you scale it, you can't do it that way anymore. You gotta go faster. And so then it's like, it's a little more rushed. It's a little more flying by the seat of your pants, I guess. But it's like, let's open 5. And as we're getting that ramp up period into where we want those sales to be, we're already pipelined in the next, for the next 5 stores, for the next 10. You never want those dead periods when we're trying to grow as fast as we are right now. So as we're building 5, we're trying to secure the next 5 and then have the next 5 open. It's kind of like, because there's so many phases from signing a lease to actually serving coffee, and it takes a lot of time. So you gotta always have, stores pipelined that are gonna be open as you're developing the ones that are brand new. So the business becomes definitely more layered and more complex because now you need support for all the existing stores while you're trying to develop the new ones. And so on that note, like my role in Cali has changed a lot,
Okay.
Yeah, because I opened the business wanting to do exactly what they're doing back there. Like, I'm jealous when I come in. I just don't have the time anymore to work those 5-hour shifts. But we did for the first 2.5 years. Rose and I were in there. I mean, we didn't take a day off when we opened Hollywood for like 125 days or something. We were in there 16 hours a day. It was her and I and one other employee. And then as we started to grow a little bit, we'd start to hire 1-2 people at a time. But we wanted to make every drink. We wanted to talk to every single customer. You didn't want to miss anything. And now it's unrealistic. But once you've built a successful business and you've trained the right people and built the right systems, you don't need to do that anymore, right?
Exactly.
Because I can put, our managers there and we know they're just going to kick butt and do exactly what we would do. But that was a very difficult concept to let go of and compromise on, once we got to the point where it needed to be. And Rose's dad, who's a really smart guy, Jim, he told me, he's like, look, nobody's ever going to do it 100% as good as you are, right? You just got to know that, because nobody's ever going to care as much. Nobody's going to understand the business that you created as well as you do.
Yeah.
But if they can do it 92%, 94% as good, and you have 10 of those people, isn't that better?
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, I get it. And so we just have to make sure that Cali's so much better that if we do sacrifice 8%, and I'm not saying that they're doing 8% less, I feel like they're doing some things better than I am now.
Yeah.
But that you're still at a level that you can live with,
Yeah. So we'll cut this out if you want to, but like, what's a ballpark on each location in sales?
It ranges, it does. Our busiest store is the Cooper City store.
Yeah.
And it does a lot. I don't really care, I guess. It's doing about 2.5 million in gross sales.
Wow.
Yeah, that one last year. But this store is the newest one, and it's funny because Cooper City, that's crushing it.
Yeah.
We almost didn't even take that lease because that was our second store.
Wow.
When we opened that store, we were very anti end cap model. We thought it was like you either do a freestanding Cali by itself on its own little island, type of thing, so to speak, or you don't do it at all. That was just the mentality at first. But we got to a point where we were really struggling to find a second site, and we needed a second site. We really wanted one. And so that one came up on Griffin Road, and we were like, all right, let's take a flyer on it. We don't know how well it'll do, but there were a lot of pros to that model too. It was less expensive to build out.
Yeah.
The developer takes care of a lot of the things you don't want to have to take care of up front, like prior to getting open, going through the city, permitting, all that. And so it was a lot more economical. And then once we opened up, it was like gangbusters. And so we totally shifted our mentality. And so now we're like, we love the freestandings, but our end caps do just as well.
Yeah.
And we snag as many as we can, that are in good locations.
Yeah.
We have no bias either way now. So.
Yeah. Do you ever want to go nationwide at some point?
It's funny. I don't know, man. That's a good. Right now, our goal, and again, we're always moving the goalpost. Like 3 years ago, I didn't even want a franchise, and now we've signed 28 franchise locations. And
wow.
Yeah, it just evolves so much. Like as you grow, and as the business grows, and as you grow and start to learn more, you start to just change your objectives and your goals.
Yeah.
Nationwide right now is really not something that I'm like. We're not looking that far ahead, I guess,
Okay.
And maybe that's somewhere we get. Right now, we always say we want to be Florida famous. So we want to be like the coffee shop in Florida. If you live here, you know about it. Or if you like travel here, you want to come to Cali because you've heard about it, right? Like kind of like In-N-Out is.
I was going to say that as an example,
It's the same type of like that. And also, it's I used to kind of avoid it, but it's not. We're very like, we have a very cult-like customer base in the sense of like, they're just the best, man.
Yeah.
They're diehard. They care. Like they bring our staff food. If you look around, there's so much food around here. The staff doesn't even buy that half the time.
Wow.
Customers will come in, box of donuts.
Amazing.
Here you go. On holidays, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
They'll bring in like plates of food, or we had a customer who used to bring like giant party platters of like Chick-fil-A or whatever for the staff.
Dude.
Just keep them fed. And so where else do you get that? Where?
That's rare.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the time on the clock?
31 minutes.
31 minutes. All right, cool. I want to ask you a little bit on not business stuff related. Okay,
sure.
So how did you meet Rose? What was I want to get your perspective and her perspective.
They should be the same story. I was coaching at that gym I was talking about, Brick in Los Angeles. I'd been a coach there for maybe 2 years, and then she started coming in as a member. She was going to USC at the time, studying.
Like the college?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she was doing exercise science out there, and she started going as a member. It's kind of she was obsessed with the show The Biggest Loser. She would just watch that show religiously.
Yeah.
And Bob Harper was one of the trainers on that show. So she Googles one day. She Googles like, where does Bob Harper train? And it says somehow she found out he trains at Brick, because he was very open about it. He was like, I love Brick. He was super into CrossFit. And so she signed up as a member there to hopefully meet Brett, to meet Bob. And then, Bob was great. He was always there at the 10 a.m. class doing his crazy workouts. And so then she just fell in love with that too, graduated, became a coach. And so then we started coaching together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, what were things, because obviously you guys are engaged now, what were some things that you weren't willing to compromise when it came to finding a partner or just wanting to date in general? You know how there's people who have non-negotiables?
Yeah.
What were you seeing things
Yeah.
you were not like, hey, like if you don't meet this, then I don't want to date, basically, if you had any?
I mean, from a personality standpoint, I guess, there weren't really any. I'm very like, I never judge anybody. Rose will say that too. And I just have a mentality of like, do what you want to do. If it doesn't hurt other people, it's fine. Like, do your thing, like if you want to do something, do it for yourself.
Yeah.
So with her, it's just more of like, how compatible are we going to be as things go on, right? And it's just like, for me, it's like you either know if it's good or if it's bad.
Yeah.
It was never like like I don't have like a list of like, these are what I want to see out of a girl, and these are the things I don't like. It's just, at least not consciously.
Yeah.
For me, really, the only thing I can think of that would kind of fit that category is like, I knew that Cali Coffee wanted to be, like, had to be a priority for me. Always has been. And so the fact that she was moving with me, well, it's funny, when she moved with me initially, she wasn't even going to be a part of the Cali adventure.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, she wasn't going to, because she didn't grow up in that world.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so she was just going to move with me. And we were just gonna be together, but not business partners. And then it evolved into that.
Wow.
And she's so good at so many things that I'm not good at that, thank God, that it worked out that way. Because she does so many of the things that I just either, I'm like, oh man, I gotta do this, just stuff on the back end. I'd rather focus on being like creative and thinking of like, I love like the construction aspect, the culture aspect. And so she does a lot. She just is like, look, I'm gonna do what you don't want to do so we can make this business flourish.
Yeah, man.
And she's good at all that stuff too. So I guess that would have been the only thing. If she was like, you can't open Cali Coffee, I would have been like, well, then we can't go on any further. But we would have found that out 8 years ago,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna ask her this question as well, just so you know. But as a partner in life or in business, what is one thing that Rose is better at than you?
Oh man, it's more like what's anything I'm better at than her. It's the tough part, but she's great at everything.
Yeah.
I mean, she's way more level-headed for sure. Again, going back to your very first question of what would you ask or tell your 18-year-old self is to take a little more time on answers. She's always been good at that. She'll think things through. She's a God, what's
like a logical thinker type?
Very, and she's an overthinker.
Okay.
And self-admittedly, she'll tell you she overthinks everything. I'm trying to think of her star sign, whatever it is. But by nature, they're very analytical, self-critical, that kind of thing. And I'm not. I'm and it's crazy because the whole I'm not like I'm an Aquarius type of thing. But if you look at the things, I'm like, wow, okay, I do fit a lot of these things because I just I'll fly by the seat of my pants. I'll kind of do something before I know it's good or not because I think I'll get a whim that it is good. I go off my gut a lot, whereas she'll think about something really, really hard before she'll make a decision. So it comes in handy sometimes. I think both come in handy. Sometimes you need to make a quick decision and just rely on your instincts, and hopefully it is a right decision. But she will think things through, and so that's definitely one of her strong suits.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, so I have this desire to be a husband and have kids one day, right? You recently just became a father.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. How has your perspective on life changed ever since having your daughter? What's your daughter's name?
Ray.
And how old is she now?
She turned 3 months about
3
a week
months.
ago, yeah.
So how's that shifted your perspective on life, I guess?
It changes it a lot. I was really apprehensive at first to even consider that because we were so heavily vested in the business. 24/7, 365. Like, as an entrepreneur, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to have all this free time. It's like, not if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, you will have no free time.
Exactly.
Vacation doesn't exist. Weekends are gone.
Yeah.
And so it's scary, like thinking about having to have another human to rely solely on you. And if you're not there, they are helpless without you. And so, but I like the idea. And again, I was getting older. And so I was like, let's try. And it's the best thing, it's the best thing ever, man. You have something just greater than yourself. To do it for, it's extra motivation. So anytime you lost because you're doing it with her, you don't feel like you're sacrificing anymore. It like creates balance without you having to create it for yourself. Because now you're like, I still only have 24 hours in the day, but I need to spend time with this little creature, right? I still need to get my business stuff done. But it is the best, and it just gives you something. You're like, man, everything I do now, you know, you've even though she's a blob right now, I keep calling her these blob and a thing.
Creature.
It's so funny. But you know, you kind of just pretend like she knows what's going on, and so you always want to do right by her and do the best thing. Have her make, you know, have her be proud of you for all the decisions you make. And then again, I'm like hoping she's going to be really into Cali one day. Want to take the reins, you know, and run this company someday. That'd be the best. And if she doesn't, that's great too. But set it up for her, kind of thing.
So this is a final question, wrapping up. What was that feeling of fatherhood like? Were you nervous? Were you like, oh my gosh, this is my daughter? You know, did you have mixed emotions? Like, what was that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was surreal. I'll tell you that. Like the day of the hospital when it was all going down, when she was giving birth, and nothing went according to plan. They
never do. That's what I hear all the time.
They never do. Yeah. So you go in with a plan, and everyone's like, yeah, it's gonna go like this, this, and then once you get there, it's just all out the window. And at the end of the day, you just want to come home with a healthy baby, a healthy girl, and that's all that really matters. And so I was never really nervous. Again, I think I may have been a little bit underprepared just because there's so much information out there. So I'm like, it's a natural thing to become a parent, right? At some intrinsic evolutionary level. And so I'm like, I'll figure it out as I go. I always have. And so I didn't read a single book, you know, and I'm not bragging about that. I think books are great. They may have come in handy. I never changed a diaper in my life. I'd only held like a baby maybe once or twice in my whole life before that. And then you're surprised at how natural it really is. You know, they come out and you're like, oh my God, they're there. And they're small and they're white and they're just flailing around. And, you know, you hold them for the first time and it really is an amazing thing.
Wow.
And it's impossible to really you can't, you know, compare that to any other feeling. At least I can't before that, because it's just so different than anything else. But you know, it's the best thing ever, and everything they do, you're just like obsessed with. Like your camera roll goes from like all Cali stuff to like I gotta scroll so far out to find Cali now because it's all her, like videos of her drooling and stuff. Oh, look at it, she drooled, you know, how cool is that?
That's awesome.
Your friends are going, yeah, great. That's disgusting. You know?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Dude, well, I really was excited and looking forward to this interview and this podcast. You know, like I said, I love you and Rose's story just with the business, and I wanted to get more in depth on your personal, like, you know, between being a father, just, you know, your background and stuff. Is there anything you want to plug, or, you know, any shameless plugs out there at all?
Nah, not really. You know, I really enjoyed our time. I appreciate you having me on here. It was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care.